Well, this is exciting. John, you led the way. You were so amiable and fun to listen to. I hope that I give I'm helpful to people with my story that I'm sticking to. And I thought I'd first show you a couple of pictures, photographs. I dug up some photographs. And let's see if this works. Hold on. Share. Okay. How about this? This is baby Pat. Isn't she cute? Can you see her? Can you see her? All right. And then this is baby Pat's cage that my father built for me, and I managed to escape from by putting my head on one side and my feet on the other and ripping it apart from the inside. And this is cheery little Pat on the streets of Lower East Side. And you can see how lovely my mother is there and how close we are. and, and then this is an older Pat, but look at the closeness there. No, there was never any pictures in my family of people touching each other or putting their arms around each other or anything like that. And so this is me, high school prom, and I'll tell you about that later. That's my first fiance. And here we go. This is me marrying Pete, my mom and dad, who I hadn't seen at that point for about 2.5 years. First time they saw me in 2.5 years, because we had a little parting of the ways. So I thought they were pretty ballsy to show up. And this is where we got married in Central Park. And this is where some of Pete's ashes are scattered right there. And there we are, young family, older family, older family. So there we go. So that was just kind of to give you a visual. And let's see, I'll stop the share. And so I wanted to start out with thanking you for being here and giving me this opportunity, and to look at my life as a spiritual journey. And the first things that were said to me as I emerged from the womb was, put it back, it's not a boy. So, and the thing to say that's one thing, but to tell you later is another thing. And then I guess I cried a lot. So I was told that my father just pinched my ass so hard that I went into a complete freak out frenzy and exhausted myself to sleep as a baby. So that was like how it was. And as I showed you, not a whole lot of closeness, a lot of, physical and verbal abuse. And in fact, later on, after my sister got pregnant at 15 or 16 and left, and I was left as the only one to beat, my father would go after me. He was an alcoholic and was drunk most of the time. So he would kind of hang out in this little part of the house that you couldn't move in the house unless you went through there. And then he'd pick a fight, and then we'd wind up in a physical fight. And so I remember one time he wanted to kill me, and so I had locked myself in the bathroom, and he was throwing himself against the door, and the door was bulging just like in Disneyland in the haunted house. I was terrified, but I just said, okay, fuck it, and opened up the door and went up in his face. I said, you want to kill me, you bastard? Go ahead, kill me. So this was the fun times at my house. So another memory was coming home late at night as a teenager. My father was just passed out on the toilet, puke all around him with his underwear around his ankles, and my mother spread out on the bed, partially disrobed, and nowhere for me to pee. There was only one bathroom. I go in the kitchen, and the sink is full of dishes. So I peed on the dishes. So, it was some place to get away from. And I married the first guy who would take me as far away as I possibly could get, and just disappeared one day, eloped to San Francisco. We were living in the Bronx, so I think my father, when I spoke to him on the phone, he went, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in San Francisco," and he goes, "Ugh," because he thought he'd come and get me, but that was too far. Anyway, so a rough beginning, but also spiritually, Oh, there's the three things. There's songs, and there's spirit, and there's sex. So, so the songs, I remember loving songs. I remember being like 2 or 3. I could probably look up the year when Love Is a Many Splendid Thing. Oh no, Stranger in Paradise was out, and I heard the song, and I knew the word suspenders, but I didn't know the word suspended. So that's how I dated it, because I thought the song was "Here I Hang Suspenders" instead of "suspended," and so I loved songs. Always loved songs, and when I was a young kid with a bicycle and a basket and a transistor radio, it was always going. Then of course living in the best times ever. Um, High school when the Beatles hit, and a little too young for Elvis when he hit, but always loved songs. So I had the songs going, and one memory came to me when I was thinking of my spiritual journey, and I was brought up a Catholic, and that was so cool, the rosaries and the little missal and the white dress and all a big deal. And so I remember being in church one day, and they were talking about hell, and I was envisioning the floor opening up and the flames, and then I heard this song from the choir, which said, "My soul is thirsting for the Lord. When will I see him face to face?" And I remember that moment like it's now, because that yearning was there. And then, all wrapped up in Catholicism, and the bishop comes through and gives you your plenary indulgence. You could die right now and you can go to heaven, but the minute I get out that door, I know I'm screwed, because I'm gonna lose it by the time I get out the door. So I didn't, I wanted to believe it. When I was in grammar school, I remember one time, and I think it was for Lent, I rolled up my pajamas and put on a coat and ran out to church for 6 a.m. Mass every morning, and alone. And so I wanted that. And then I wanted to be a nun. Yeah, when I was in grammar school, I wanted to be a nun. I was so devout. But then I got to high school, and and it was all girls' schools, so I had no exposure to boys at all, and until I think it was sometime in high school, I got exposed to my best friend's older brother. And that was over for me. Being a nun was never going to happen, because I could no longer pass the physical. And so 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 that was another kind of thing, and being so actually bereft, internally bereft at the same time, because I never had anybody around me taking care of me. I was strong and independent, and but at the same time, something was missing. I didn't feel like I was being taken care of. And so, although I must have been, because I survived it. And this combination of strength and sadness, and but men, boys, they like a girl who needs love, and that was one of my big occupations at the time. And so that was the beginning of my exposure to religion. Was the nuns. They were mean, and then they'd show you this old movie called King of Kings, where Jesus was being beat up and killed and all, and then they'd say, "It's your fault, you did it." Such strange stuff. Anyway, but then I left the church because I was off on other pursuits, and especially lifeguards. I especially like lifeguards. They had like very small bathing suits on, and lots of muscles. And so I did, that guy I showed you that I got engaged to, he was a lifeguard, a swimmer. And my big high school crush was a lifeguard. And so I I had something going for lifeguards. But I married this guy that I met the first day I went to my first year of college. Eloped with him before the before the before my sophomore year, just before it started, and spent a year in San Francisco. And all this was, I was not pursuing anything spiritual at all at that time. So, so then he made the very bad mistake of dumping me back in my parents' house. Took a gig in the army that he didn't consult with me about, and left me for a year. So then he dumps me back with my parents, and I'm like, this ain't a good thing. But I had an asset then, I had a car. So I went to a Christmas party in 1966 at my best friend's house from high school, and I met Pete there. Boom, And so we were together from that night until the night he died 57 years later, with maybe one or two nights for reasons that we couldn't control that we weren't together. And although that was, that was rough because Pete had his, he had something very deeply disturbed about him, although we had fun and we loved each other and we made a beautiful family. But it had its rough times and lots of times where I thought I would just leave, but I never did. There was a deep, deep feeling in me that I needed to be there, that I was supposed to be there. And so I stayed. And then we were in LA, and I went to church one day, and I went alone. It was a unity. And I remember the minister talking about how much God loves us. And I was literally bent over like this with just tears coming out, just weeping, because I felt like such a piece of shit. I really said, I cannot connect with this message. And crying, and I heard a voice just as clear as a bell in my ear, and it said, "Go home and hug your daughter, and you'll see how much I love you." Okay, so I went home, I opened up the door, my daughter came flying out at me and jumped on top of me. She must have been 6, 7 at that time, and just jumped on me and hugged me, and I feel that every time I hug her. So okay, that was it. And then there was a TV show. It was called There Is a Way. And it was a spiritual show in the morning, and whoever this was would interview people, different people in the spiritual world. And he had Gerald Jampowski on one day, and he talked about the Course in Miracles. So I ran on down to the Bodhi Tree bookstore, which is a famous spiritual bookstore in LA, and bought myself a Course in Miracles. And so that must have been like 1986 or so. And I was reading it, I was underlining it, and I was doing all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, boom, on the shelf. Didn't do it anymore, but so then I was in this organization called Free for All. It was a skills co-op. And it was like, you said you could do these things, this stuff I could do. I could do photography, I could do writing of promotional pieces, I could do layout on a brochure. And if people asked me to do that stuff, I'd do it for them. And the same thing would go both ways. But you didn't like, it wasn't tit for tat. You didn't like, they didn't have to do it for you, whatever, whatever you said you would do, anybody who asked you, you would do it. And then I would ask anybody what they did, and they would do it for me. So this woman called me up and she said, "I want you to help me write a brochure." So I said, okay. I wrote a brochure, trifold, and pictures and copy and stuff like that. And then I said, bring it up to you, and we'll, you can look at it and see whether you like it and whether you want changes. So it turns out she was a psychic, and we went over the brochure and all that, and then I said, well, you know what, I know I'm not supposed to do this because it's not the rules of the group, but I'm here. Let me ask you a question. She says, okay. So I said, well, how can I help Pete? Because Pete was depressed all the time. He was in bed most of the time. And so I said, how can I help Pete? Now, she did not know me. Zero. She did not know me. She knew nothing about me. I didn't mention that Pete was my husband. I didn't say anything to her. She says, oh, well, she does this thing and she does this thing. And then she starts telling me Pete's entire life story in detail. How his father was, how his mother was, how it affected him, and all this stuff. And I'm going, oh, woo, you know. And she says, well, you know what to do. And I said, no, I'm asking you. That's why I asked you. She said, you got to study the Course in Miracles together. Okay. So I went home to the back of the house. There's Pete in bed. I climb up on the bed and I go, Pete, wake up. He says, what? I said, we have to study the Course in Miracles together. And he says, okay. And I went, what? Because anything I ever asked him to do, he would say no. So I was like, what? Okay. So we started reading the Course in Miracles together. And we thought, this is a bunch of crap. What the heck is this stuff? You know, well, we kept reading it. And somewhere along the way there, and then Pete was pursuing this whole songwriting thing, and he said to me, you know, you're not a songwriter, you know, and he just excluded me from it completely. And then, you know, I'd come in there and try to get in there, and he'd discount everything I was saying, you know. So it was not a very good relationship in that, you know, at that time, as far as songwriting went. But we were teaching songwriting together, and he wrote a book about songwriting, and we did workshops for 40 years together. And so we had a guy in the workshop who he had been to Nashville. He said, you should go to Nashville, you'll love it. Okay, so my daughter went off to college, and we had an empty nest. So we said, okay, let's go visit Nashville. We got there. On the second night we were here, one of our friends from LA who had already moved here brought us to the songwriting event in this guy's house. I don't know, 50 people in the room. And they started singing a song. Well, you know, a person would be doing the song. You know, there were 5 people picked, and those people would go around singing their songs. And when they start singing the song, even though they started writing it that afternoon and nobody had ever heard it, as soon as they were into it, people would be playing violins and bass and drums and singing and harmonizing. And I was just tears running down my face. I said, wow. And I turned to Pete and I said, we're moving. That was it. That was like October of '99. And we came back in March to visit again, and then by July we had moved. Wow, boy, that was a purging of massive stuff in LA to get out of that house, and so we were there, moved into to Nashville. We came in a motorhome, thinking, well, you know, maybe we'll just see how we like it. We came in this motorhome, and we thought we'd go home maybe Thanksgiving back to LA. Never, not Christmas, not nothing. We said, oh, well, we're here now. So we bought a house, and we were out in the songwriting world every night. We were collaborating all over the place. We were writing, we were living the songwriter life, and it was just wonderful. I learned how to harmonize for the first time in my life, and we just had a great old time with that. And we were still reading every day. We were reading Course in Miracles every day, and then through a series of God things, we moved. Oh no, what happened was Pete got his diagnosis of Parkinson's in 2007, and we had to move out of the house we were in, we thought, because the way we lived in that house, we were up and down the stairs every day. So we bought a house in Goodlettsville, and it took us 9 months to find that house. and actually wasn't good for us. So we were just living in the downstairs, and the master bedroom was upstairs. And so then Pete's stepmother, who was running Pete's dad's publishing company, so Pete's dad had died, she said, "I'm going to sell the company. You're going to get a lot of money." Good. let's do this. So then well, let's go looking for a house. This house isn't really working for us. Let's go looking. And the second house we looked at was April the 3rd or the 4th, was the first when she told us about the incoming money. And we went looking for the house on the 2nd or the 3rd. The second house we looked at, we said, we're buying it. We bought the house. The money didn't come through for like 7 years, but didn't matter. We had this house. So that put us in this neighborhood. And in this neighborhood, we were right next to a church. So we went to church there. I didn't tell this really great story that happened in LA, because one of the things I did as a music business journalist was interview songwriters about their songwriting technique. And I made it happen that I interviewed Mr. Rogers. So I got him on the phone, asked him all these things about how he wrote and all that stuff. And then when it was over, I said, I have a personal question. And he says, I said, I know you're a minister. Can I talk to you about this? Sure. I said, I just don't think God is taking care of me here. I don't think he's doing a very good job of taking care of me. And Mr. Rogers said, well, you could say that. And I still cry every time I think about that. He could have said you're wrong. He could have said anything. But he said, you could say that, but looking back, haven't you been taken care of all along? And he turned my life around, just turned it right around. So still, I don't have that feeling at all anymore that I'm not being taken care of. That it took a while for that to go away, but every time I would get that feeling, I would say, wait a minute, how did I survive all the stuff that I survived up to this point? I mean, I could have been killed any number of times because there was never an adult around taking care of me. I was always on my own. I learned that lesson back then. Anyway, we were now in Nashville, and we now bought this house in this neighborhood. Church next door. So we start going to the church, and the church has a pastor who's really inspired, and he's delivering the message without the meanness. It was all about love and unity, and I'm going, great, because we love him. We go there every week. We're all excited about it. And then one crazy lady in the church blew up. She was the treasurer, and she didn't like, she was leading a revolution against the minister. And she was like, blah, blah, blah. She slams the checkbook down. I'm not doing this anymore. And she walks out. And so then I became the treasurer and saw how messed up that job was she was doing. And myself and another lady straightened it out. But the church fell apart. And I was so upset about that. I mean, it just disturbed me so much. And that very weekend, there was something going on, and I think it was through Lisa Natoli. I don't know. It was some kind of spiritual convention, and I'm not going to remember the name of the guy, but you know him. He's a Zen Buddhist teacher, and he led the. Sorry, John is texting me, and. He led this thing about how to deal with difficult situations. So I didn't have the technology. I wasn't savvy enough to make this work anyway, but to have one thing playing what he was saying and the other thing recording it. And so you can hear on the recording when he's talking about go to that situation. Live in it yourself. Go in and be back there where it was. And I was just sobbing. You could hear me sobbing on the table. I was so distraught. And so he says, okay, go in there and see it all. Now walk out and look up the road and somebody's coming. It was Jesus. He came down the road. He came down the driveway. And he held me, and I cried and cried. And he gave me a gift. It was a heart. It was a heart that I have never seen anything like it on the planet. It was both firm and soft. It was glowing. It was beautiful. And so now the person who's leading this thing says, now swap point of view with that person that you just met, or entity, whatever. And people saw angels or the Virgin Mary, or or whoever they saw, Buddha, whatever. I saw Jesus, and so swap your point of view with them, and now go back into the situation. So okay, so I went back into the church, and I saw all these people and how they, how really lost and confused, and I felt compassion for them. I was no longer their victim. I was just sad about. I was not. I guess sad could be a good way to describe it, but more compassion that they were so lost. And so that was an amazing thing. And so we were still reading the course every day, and it came into my head. I said, we need to connect with somebody. We had never connected with anybody who was reading the course. So let's connect with somebody. And I went online. I went to the ACIM World, whatever, and I found a meeting with Ann Cozy. Ann Cozy is a local lady she's held a meeting for decades. So this was at a Unity Church, and we drove over there. I don't know how long we did that, on every Sunday morning, and read the course and talked in this group. And that amped up my understanding of the course so much, not to be doing it alone, to be doing it with other people. And so I got launched into all of the because they would drop names and look that up. And so I took Lisa Natoli's 40-day thing twice, and then went to a number of their conferences, Zoom conferences, and so I imagine how I wound up here. So because I can't remember, and I know Sandy can't remember when or how I showed up in this group, and so that's that's how I got here and got introduced to Helen Hamilton. And by the way, this, I think it's hilarious, says nothing is random in your day. This morning I woke up at 3, 4, or something like that. It's not unusual, and I have an iPad by my bed, and so I thought, well, I'd like to put Helen Hamilton on. I guess she puts me to sleep. So, and a lot of times I'll like scroll and look for, this, that, or the other thing. But this morning, the very first thing that was there was a Helen Hamilton thing that said, "How awake are you?" I said, okay, this sounds like a good subject right now. And I was laying down and not looking, I was laying, but I was listening intently. And boy, I'm saying she's knocking it out of the park. There's one word here that I'm not going boom, 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 wow. And because the subject was about the moment, that we're not somebody who's in the moment. The moment is in us. We are the moment. But she did it so well, and I was going, Jesus, she's really on top of her game. I bet this is the latest thing she did. Then I hear somebody talking about Christmas presents in the questions, and I look, and it was from 2 years ago. anyway, so so wound up here, and now have this Wednesday meeting that I coffee with. Then I have a Course in Miracles on Saturday and Sunday, and I mean it's like reading a different book now, because reading it and having the words just go in and me just go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So all of this in the meantime, I had a series of dreams. This is the spiritual thing here, the series of dreams. The first dream I had was that I was I had been tried and convicted of some crime. And and I was saying, but I don't remember doing anything bad. I don't remember anything. So that was the beginning of the opening of the door for me. Then the next dream I had was I dreamed that I woke up in the middle of the night and I walked out to where my front door is, which has a glass centerpiece, and there was a female. I think it was me. I mean, who knows? Everything is me, so it doesn't matter. And she was kneeling, like squatting, kneeling, and there was light coming in that glass, and there was light coming out of her, and it was like this giant arc of light, circle of light, in and out like that. Oh, amazing! And what did I do? I screamed my head off. I screamed. I was terrified. I woke up screaming. So, yeah. Um, and so Pete had Parkinson's, as he had since 2007, and it kept getting worse. Meanwhile, I said we moved into this neighborhood and next to the church. And before we even got into the house, we saw there was a sign for a neighborhood meeting. So we went there, and we met the pastor and his wife, and then we started a block club. And it started with a Christmas party, and there was Pete and John. Now John and Judy live like a half a mile from the house that we bought here in the neighborhood, and they became our best friends. The four of us were best friends. And so it was Pete and John and the pastor and another guy named Ray, and they were singing for this Christmas party. And they also like, this should be a good thing. We should do this every month. So once a month, we would rotate in the houses and gather and sing our songs. And then COVID hit. Then we did it on YouTube. And then Pete was getting worse and worse. And finally, he had dementia. He had, lost control of his body. He had delusions. He had paranoia. He was just completely out of control. And I had some help, but basically the load was on me, and I was just freaked. So I wrote to Helen Hamilton, and I asked her. I said, "What?" I described the scene. He's out of his mind. I wake up in the morning. He's eating ice cream at the sharp end of the scissors. I'm at my wit's end here. What should I be doing? And she was wonderful and said, the only thing I can say is be authentic. You're not some kind of spiritual, perfect being. Be authentic, feel what you feel, express what you're feeling. So I did a lot of crying and screaming and and stuff like that. And I got some help, and eventually he did die. And it was for all of us a relief, for him, for me, because he was just not who he was not being Pete. I mean, he did he did have I don't know if I told you guys, I inherited his computer, and I actually sort of knew about this, but I inherited his computer, and so I'm trying to deal with what's on the computer and clean it up, and I find 50 bookmarks to pornography of a certain kind. He had a fascination with big boobs, and I was like, I knew sort of about that, but the thought that he spent so much, how much time must he have spent to research these, to watch them, and all of this time when I was saying, gee, I need you to make love to me, and he would say, nope, nope, nope. So that was a thing throughout our entire um, relationship. Although we loved each other madly and we had wonderful times together as well, that was hard for me. And but I see now that I should have put my foot down way early in the relationship and made some kind of effort to get him to get healed from that, but he never did. So, but all of this is a spiritual thing because now, because of, looking back again, like Mr. Rogers said, God put me in this neighborhood next to this church, a half a mile from John. John's wife dies, Pete dies, and we're just friends. And all of a sudden one night, boing! It's like I never expected it. I wasn't looking for it. And then it was like, wow, this is a different kind of love because it's not the kind I had with Pete, where I was always feeling like I got to get him to do the right thing. I got to get him to be, um, take care of himself or whatever I thought. Or I got to get him. I did get him to stop yelling at me. That was thanks to Judy, because I was telling her he would just throw tantrums and he'd scream and he'd stand over me screaming and I'd engage with it. And so I was telling her about it. She says, "Well, that wouldn't happen with me. Ooh, I'm doing this. I'm doing this." So it took me about a month to convince him that I would not put up with it anymore. But shortly thereafter, he lost his mind, so it was a little late. And so again, after he died, I went to Helen for help, and I wrote to her, and she answered me very nicely. I mean, wonderfully. And then I had a dream about being trapped under Pete's chair. He had one of those chairs that would stand you up. In the dream, I sitting on the chair, and then somebody dumped it over me, and I was trapped under the chair. And then they were pushing me along, and I was screaming, "You fucker! You fucker! You fucker!" And John's waking me up. So I'm actually screaming this out loud. So it's not like I'm just dreaming doing it. I'm actually screaming out loud. And so he woke me up, and so I went to an art thing to make some art, and I decided to make art of this dream. And it was a printmaking thing. So there's me under the chair screaming. There's the goblin, or whoever it was that was pushing me along and trapping me in the chair. And when I was making this thing up, here appears the angel who's saving me. And it's all me, of course. And so, yes. So now I'm, so one more thing to that is that now John gets a cancer diagnosis. And I'm thrown for another incredible loop. And this time I'm sitting here going nuts. And I look at the clock and it says it's like 3 minutes to 1. And I said, Helen Hamilton is going to be doing her thing like now, which I've never actually, I mean, I always watch her on YouTube. I've never actually been live with her. I got in the thing, and then time to ask questions, and I just blew it. I had lost my mind. I was crying, and I was frightened, and I was angry. And she's asked me these questions, Do I feel limited? Yeah. Do I feel powerless? Yeah. Do I feel hopeless? Yes. Am I afraid? Yes. Am I angry? Yes. So I did all that. And so the idea was to find some self-inquiry question which I could go around with to wrestle with these thoughts, and I couldn't find the question. So I said to her, I said to myself, self, what is this question? Then the question became, is it really true? I can't find the question. So I went around for a few days saying, is it really true? I can't find the question. And then the question came to me, is it really true? I can't have peace. And I talked about it in the meeting, and Cindy said, is it really true? I don't have peace. That was the thing. I do have peace. And it was so now I'm standing in what I know is the truth. So I do know that who I really am is not affected by any of this stuff. And who I really am is eternal, is invulnerable, is joyful. That's who I really am. And if I don't feel like that, if that's not what I feel like, then there's a part in the course that says, and I just tripped over it the other day, it says if you, oh yeah, I tripped over it the other day in all nothing by random. I found it up in the top shelf of a closet when I was looking for something else, where I had printed out this thing from the course that said, God's will for you is joy, and if you're not feeling that, then you must think there's another will. And so, what's the other will? And I know there's no other will. So this ability to let these the limiting thoughts, the fearful thoughts, the or even just a little bit of irritation, or I'm not feeling joyful kind of thing. Uh, all of that is somehow me thinking there's another will but God's, because if there's only God's will, and I believe that, I know that, it's not just a belief. It does, and nothing else makes sense. So for me, if I am living in God's will, I'm going to be joyful. I'm going to be peaceful. I am joyful, peaceful. And so it doesn't matter. So at this point, John he's getting chemo. He's doing this. He's got this terrible itchy rash all over his body. He doesn't want to put the medicine on it. You know, not my job to get, to wrestle with him about it. It's his life. He can do it. Or if he wants to die, he can do that too. But I have peace. I am peace. And so I am so grateful and happy, and this Cindy and the people that meet in this group, it's like I don't know, it's like food for my soul. It's like water for my thirsty seeds. It's it's I have a new life, and I'm writing songs now. I'm not even working at it. I'm just like, a song comes, it comes. All but the last line. There's always one line that wants me to work on it, but the rest of it just comes. And I never had that before. I'd sit in front of a blank piece of paper and go, oh, So when the message comes, it's delivered, it drops, and then I write it down. And I'm still madly in love with songs. I still involve myself with the songwriting and the singing and the love of appreciating other people's creativity. The song, the My favorite is the Great American Songbook. And if you guys ever watch Colbert, the Colbert Questionnaire, one of the questions is if you only had one song that would be the only song you could ever hear. If you wouldn't have to listen to it all the time, but if you had a song, if a song was going to be played, it would only be that one song. And and I say Stardust. So I said that to my daughter and her husband once, and they said, "Well, what is it like?" And I realized I could not sing it. It's so complex melodically and so interesting lyrically. And so for one of these monthly things, we're still doing that monthly songwriting thing. It's kind of grown. I used to run it, but when Pete died, one of the guys said, "You want me to take that over?" I said, "Yeah." So he's taken over and made it even more than it was. And I learned Stardust. It took me 50 times singing that song before I sang it once right. It's so complex, but I love it. So yeah, love the old songwriters, and I just get a lot of joy from it. And I think that might be all I have to say about this. So maybe people want to ask questions or say anything you want to say. There's something in the chat.
Oh, so Pat, thank you so much. I was just looking at this one place in the text of the Course in Miracles. It says, "The truly helpful are invulnerable." And in morning coffee and whatever, you always are just so transparent and open, and whether you feel embarrassed or not, you allow yourself to be helpful in just sharing exactly where you are, whether it's making Cindy blush when you talk about sex or whatever. But I'm always amazed at the timing of stuff. And I mean, your talk this morning uh, just had so much of what have come to me in less than 24 hours ago. One is the clip I put in there from Mr. Rogers that's in the chat. And it's just about a minute and 43 seconds if somebody want to play it. But it's just interesting. And for you to, and I'm like, when I listen to that clip, I'm like, he must have been a lot more spiritual than people thought he was. And here you come telling this story about him that I didn't even know he was a minister or anything like that. And that clip really reflects how deep he was. But as I was in my chair, let's around 4 o'clock a.m. this morning, uh, when you started out talking about your childhood and upbringing, so I don't know where this question came from, but that's how it goes when I'm in the chair. I just go with it. So I asked, who was Adam and Eve? If they were not humans, what is Adam and Eve? What is that? And so spirit, like uh Eve was nurture and Adam was protection and energy. And I'm like, oh, so when I came into this world, just like you said this morning, I didn't have nurture or protection. There was no father, and the mother was completely flat, no emotions, no, just like you. I don't have a memory of ever hugging my mother. No touching, no mental, emotional words uh, that builds you up. And I'm like, so just from that thought, as I sit in the chair, I'm saying, Holy Spirit, heal this broken child, this unnurtured and unprotected child, be free. And for you to come on and speak right to it,
Mhm.
it's amazing.
Nothing's random.
Thank you, Pat. I did set up that clip from Regis so we could play the 2 minutes at the end if we want to. I'm gonna sit with your sharing. Somehow for me, how do I put this? It feels like listening to John, listening to Lonnie. I don't think you heard Lonnie. Lonnie was on a Thursday, and then John, and listening to your story and whoever else. It's somehow something is working here. Just the willingness just to honor the stories and not take them. Oh, that's not the right word. I was going to say not take them so personal, but not in a way. It's like allowing all the stories to be intimately mine and all God and all part of the experience. And I am not a victim of the world I see. I created the world I see. There is another way of looking at the world. I can see peace instead of this, right?
Mm.
And so this understanding that these are experiences that are rising and falling in all of the human collective consciousness, and my story does not isolate me. My story does not make me special. My story does not permit me to stay limited. Um, Huge within your sharing and your vulnerability and your transparency, and it feels like it shot a whole bunch of holes and defenses I didn't even know I had. So thank you for saying yes, and thank you for you, and I love us all very much. I don't know that everybody here got to meet Pete, but Pete used to show up every Wednesday for years, and we got to get a snapshot of those last couple of years of his life. So, um, yeah, thank you.
That's an extraordinary story. Thank you very, very much. Really, really appreciate your sharing that whole thing. And the thing that comes to mind, the abiding thing that comes to mind is the creativity that I've witnessed in you and continue to witness in you keeps shining through. It's your ability just to show up in whatever form it is. And so, the thing came to my mind, Pat, when you're talking about some of these events you've been through. Well, it's like being forged and tempered in a very hot fire for a reason, and it spoke to me in a kind of a metaphorical way about the drunk in the gutter. We may not think very highly of him, but that could be his last step before he gets elevated to the highest position. And I kind of think that too. When we go through these events, that's just we could be just on the threshold of something. This is the last lesson we need. So it's pretty exciting when you think, though, and the way that you've gone through all this is utterly amazing with all these teachers you've had in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. It's really exciting. And I'm very honored to have listened to your story, and I feel humbled, that you've been here all this time, and I had no clue that, there's a soul, there's marching on upward, and singing her song and doing the Stardust thing 50 times over. It's amazing. I love you, Pat Luboff. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And there was something I did want to say as well, which is really the beautiful thing of it that gives me this feeling of peace is that I'm not doing this. I don't have anything to do. I am the universe expressing itself, like how you said, in the way you described Cindy put the title on this talk with. It's like I
The
don't have
divine expression through.
yeah, I'm no longer a seeker. I'm not a seeker. I got nothing to seek. Whatever is, I just feel like sit back, relax, and enjoy the show because it's all love and it's all coming my way. God's will for me is perfect happiness.
Yeah. An hour from now, we're going to be watching a 56-minute movie called Bill W. Contact. And within that movie, uh, Bill W. describes his experience in the sanitarium. So he's in rehab for what may be the very last time, and his prayer and the opening and the bright, I think they call it the bright light experience within AA and everything that happens sort of after that. So for anyone who wants to watch that movie, but knowing, like sitting with that movie and sitting with your story, I'm feeling the similarity in all the stories, right? And this understanding. What did you say that Mr. Rogers said that you could think that, or you could look
You
behind
could,
and know?
right, you could say that. Go ahead, say it. If you don't have, go say that. But look back and see you've been taken care of all along.
Yeah.
How,
So
no, he didn't say that. He said, if you look back, haven't you been taken care of all along? So that's like, so,
Kat, that's your story is so moving and touching, and thank you for that. Just wanted to thank you. And I know I said this when John spoke, but I always feel that I'm on holy ground when I hear these things. That this is sacred. This isn't just a story. This is a sacred experience, and I'm grateful for it. And when you told us what Mr. Rogers said, to me, when I look back, it's like there was always a presence, there was always a strength, always something supernatural that carried me. And it was me all along.
yeah.
And I've always, like, there's this core of strength and invulnerability, so that now when I look back, I realize I was never a victim. I thought I was, but I was never a victim. And I learned in Al-Anon, look back, but don't stare, don't get caught in it. And I love the way you personify that. All the while you're telling us these things that the world would call horrific, you were smiling. You were chuckling through it. I mean, it was amazing how you demonstrated that for us in this beautiful time with you. And I feel a kinship with you now, knowing your story. And I love what Regis said. Regis, thank you for that. So much love to you, sweetheart.
And to you.
All right, Nadego, you got about a minute.
It's just so great just to be here with everyone and just the openness and just the love and thank you so much for sharing. It's so beautiful to hear everything and just it's just so beautiful. So I'm just so grateful to be here with all of you. That's really I'm just so happy. And we're so blessed. I guess that's what I would say. We're so blessed. We are so loved. And we don't know it.
Thank you. Hey, Richard.
Morning, everyone. I love us all. I just wanted to thank Pat for a wonderful talk. And I too was born in Manhattan, so we share that maybe a few years before you were, but love us all. That's all I got.
All right. Love us all. I am going to stop the recording and we meet again in an hour, though I am going to play Mr. Rogers for anyone who wants to see it.
And just real quick, if I may, Pat, thank you. This is Libby. Thank you for reminding us that there are songs within us that are just ready to be waiting to be written. I needed to hear that today. So thanks for that reminder.
Oh, thank you.